In a quiet seaside town, there lived a young painter named Elias. He dreamed of having his art displayed in the Grand Museum of the city, a place where every great artist left their mark. For years, he painted through the nights, his small room filled with the scent of oil and hope. He believed that this year would be his year. But when the results of the art exhibition came, Elias's painting was rejected. The judges said it was too abstract, too lifeless. He stood before the notice board, eyes fixed on the list that did not hold his name. The sound of the waves outside felt distant, hollow, like they belonged to another world. That night, he stared at the empty wall in his home where he had imagined his medal would hang. All he saw was failure staring back at him. Days turned into weeks. Elias stopped painting. The brushes dried up. The once colorful room became dull and gray. Every morning, sunlight crept through his window, but he kept the curtains closed. He didn't want to see the day begin, because each new day reminded him of what he had lost. He spent hours by the shore, watching waves break and disappear. In their endless rhythm, he saw a reflection of himself, rising, falling, and fading again. And sometimes, he whispered, "Maybe I was never meant to be an artist." One gray morning, as Elias sat by the shore, he noticed an old woman collecting driftwood from the sand. She hummed a soft tune, her basket filled with broken pieces of wood, washed pale by the sea. Curious, Elias asked, "Why gather those? They're useless now." The woman smiled. "Oh no, they're far from useless," she said. "These pieces once belonged to ships that lost their way in storms. Now, I turn them into frames for new paintings." Elias looked closer. The wood was cracked, uneven, but beautiful in its own way. For the first time in months, something inside him flickered, a small, almost forgotten feeling. That night, Elias returned home and took down his old canvas. He gathered pieces of driftwood and began to paint again, this time, not for others, but for himself. He painted not perfection, but truth. He painted the sea, the storms, the broken wood, and the light that always came after. When he finished, he named the piece "The Dawn of Failure." It was raw, imperfect, but alive, just like him. And for the first time, Elias smiled at his work. Because in every stroke of that painting, he saw his story and his rebirth. Instead of sending it to another competition, Elias hung the painting outside his small studio by the road. People walking by would stop to look, not because it was flawless, but because it felt real. An old fisherman whispered, "It reminds me of the sea after the storm." A child said, "It looks like hope." Elias realized then he didn't need recognition to create meaning. Art wasn't about being seen. It was about feeling. He whispered to himself, "I only see my goals. I don't believe in failure anymore." Months later, a traveler passed through the town. He was a curator from the city museum, and when he saw Elias's painting, he stopped in awe. Soon, the dawn of failure was displayed in the museum that Elias had once only dreamed of. But now, he didn't feel pride, he felt gratitude. Standing before his work, he smiled softly and said, "Sometimes, failure is not the end, it's the beginning of who we're meant to become." Outside the museum window, the first light of morning painted the sky in gold. And for Elias, it felt like dawn once again. If you like the story, give it a like and share it. Subscribe for more stories. See you in the next one. Stay strong. Stay peaceful.